The city stretched beneath Grant Temple like a conquered kingdom. From the tinted windows of his Rolls-Royce, Manhattan's skyline gleamed, sharp, polished his. The late afternoon sun bounced off steel and glass, painting the world in gold, but Grant didn't admire the view. He owned it. His driver, a silent shadow in a black suit, opened the door. Cold air rushed in, biting and electric. Grant stepped onto the pavement, his custom Oxfords clicking against the wet concrete. The scent of rain and exhaust clung to the air, but beneath it, something else. Something cheap. His lip curled. A crowd parted for him instinctively. Suits, tourists, the invisible working class. They all moved aside. He was Grant Temple, CEO of Temple Industries. A man who turned startups into empires and rivals into footnotes. And then, a cart blocked his path. It was a rickety thing, wobbling on uneven wheels. Scarves hung from its sides, hand-sewn, the threads frayed at the edges. And behind it, a girl, young, too young to be out here alone. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy braid, her jacket too thin for the biting wind. But her eyes, sharp, watchful. She didn't cower when he stopped in front of her. "Move," Grant said, his voice low. The girl didn't flinch. "Buy something, sir?" She held up a scarf, deep blue, the edges uneven. "Only $10. Grant stared at it, then at her. A laugh escaped him, cold, humorless. "Do I look like I shop in the gutter?" Her fingers tightened around the fabric. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her. "You're my way." A flick of his wrist. His bodyguard, a mountain of muscle in a tailored suit, moved. One shove, the cart toppled. Scarves spilled onto the sidewalk, tumbling into the gutter. Rainwater soaked into the fabric instantly, turning blue to black, red to mud. The girl dropped to her knees, hands darting out to grab them before they were ruined completely. Grant watched, amused. "You'll die poor," he said. Then he stepped over her, his shoe brushing against her fingers as he walked away. Inside the highbrow restaurant called the Fiorella, the world was warm. Crystal chandeliers, the murmur of power brokers. A waiter materialized with a glass of bourbon before Grant even sat. He took it, swirling the amber liquid. Across the room, a senator waved. A tech mogul nodded. Everyone wanted his attention. Everyone wanted a piece of him. Grant smirked. Outside, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city pulsed. Lights flickered on as dusk settled. Somewhere out there, the girl was still picking up her ruined scarves. He had forgotten about her even before the ice in his drink melted. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. The girl didn't cry. She knelt on the sidewalk, her fingers numb from the cold, and gathered the soaked fabric. Around her, people stepped over the mess. No one stopped. No one cared. She lifted her head. Through the restaurant's window, she could see him, Grant Temple, lounging in his throne of money, laughing with men who shaped the world with a phone call. Her breath fogged the air. "You'll die poor." Her hands clenched. Then, a whisper, so quiet even the wind missed it. "We'll see." She wasn't just a street vendor. She was a ghost. No social security number. No address. No record of her existence at all. The city and the system had swallowed her whole years ago, and in return, she'd learned its secrets. She knew which alleys were safe, which cops could be bribed, which men like Grant Temple, rich, powerful, careless, left their back doors unlocked. She folded the ruined scarves, her movements slow, deliberate. Then she looked back at the restaurant. Grant was smiling, clinking glasses with a man whose face had been on Forbes last week. She memorized it all. His laugh, the way his bodyguard hovered close but not too close, the way he checked his watch every 7 minutes like clockwork. Habits, patterns, weaknesses. Grant Temple didn't believe in karma. He believed in power, in money, in the unshakable truth that the world belonged to men like him. He didn't see the girl slip into the shadows, didn't see her pause one last time, her gaze lingering on his face. But fate did, and fate had plans. The broken neon sign outside Kate Owen's window flickered erratically. "Eat." The tea sputtering like a fading pulse. its sickly, glow-painted stripes across her single-room apartment, highlighting the water stains on the ceiling and the mattress directly on the floor. No bed frame. Just like her life, no foundation, no safety net. She kicked off her worn sneakers, wincing as her bag tipped over, spilling its contents. A half-eaten protein bar, lifted from a convenience store, a switchblade, always within reach, and today's meager earnings, $32.50. Enough for another day of survival. Not enough to stop surviving and start living. Not enough for hope. In the corner, her damaged scarf cart leaned precariously, its broken wheel a permanent reminder of Grant Temple's Italian loafer grinding her into the pavement. You'll die poor. Her fingers twitched toward the knife. This is how Kate's day typically went. 4:45 a.m., the 24-hour bakery on 5th. Kate's arms moved automatically, kneading dough for artisanal bread that cost more than she made in 2 hours. The owner, a barrel-chested man who reeked of garlic and stale cigarettes, watched her with perpetual suspicion. He wasn't wrong to. She'd stolen from him 4 times. He'd never caught her. 12:15 p.m., the Jefferson Public Library, her sanctuary. While reshelving books, she absorbed everything. Advanced mathematics, Brazilian jiu-jitsu manuals, books on forensic accounting. The librarians pretended not to notice her eating crumbs over Sun Tzu's The Art of War. 6:30 p.m., the streets. The scarves were just for show. The real money came from the unmarked envelopes she delivered for a man called Ringo. She never asked what they contained. Some questions were better left unanswered. Every Thursday evening, without fail, Kate positioned herself across from the Fiorella, hoping that one day, men like Grant Temple will buy her wares. And some did, just out of charity. Then she began to notice a pattern. Grant Temple dined there like clockwork. She'd cataloged every detail. 7:15 p.m., arrival. Bodyguard first, scanning the area, then Grant, never looking left or right. 9:30 p.m., bathroom break. Always alone. Too arrogant to think he needed protection. 11:10 p.m., departure. His driver, Zalo, already waiting at the curb, engine running. Tonight was different. A new player joined Grant's usual table. Marcus Vey. That face, seared into her memory for life. A name and face from a past she could never ever forget. Shipping tycoon. Alleged cartel connections. She had been looking for him. Word on the street had it that he'd relocated to Mexico. Murderer. They clinked crystal glasses of amber liquor. Grant's hand gripped Marcus's shoulder like they were old war buddies. What was Grant Temple doing with this monster? Kate's pulse quickened. She knew that look. The cold calculation of a predator circling fresh prey. She wondered if Grant could read Marcus. Her burner phone vibrated. Ringo. Package delayed. Watch for wolves. Code. She'd heard it before. It meant someone dangerous was hunting, and not for envelopes. Her eyes snapped back to Grant. Marcus was whispering something that made Grant's smile turn razor sharp. What deal are you making, you bastard? 5 years earlier, 14-year-old Kate crouched in a foster home's broom closet, knees pulled to her chest, listening to the social worker's practiced lies. Your parents' accident was tragic, but bullshit. The police report said single vehicle collision. The morgue photos she'd secretly viewed showed entry wounds, .22 caliber, execution style, and she was there. She saw everything. Her father's last rasping words as he bled out in her arms. Vey, he'll come for you too. If he knows I have a child, so run. She'd been running ever since. Until now. Kate flipped open her switchblade and slipped into the alley behind the Fiorella. The kitchen staff took their smoke breaks here, their laughter echoing off dumpsters overflowing with gourmet leftovers. She ghosted past them, silent as a shadow, to the staff's stairwell. Up, to the exclusive upper dining level. Through the service door's narrow gap, she saw them, Grant and Marcus, heads bent over a document. The shipment clears Customs Tuesday, Marcus murmured. Your contact guaranteed, no inspections. Grant's smirk could have cut glass. I own half the Port Authority. Of course it's guaranteed. Kate's breath caught in her throat. Human trafficking, arms, organs. What exactly it was she could imagine. The specifics didn't matter. What mattered was that Marcus Vey still was very bad news, and she had finally found him. She just needed some proof. Maybe then, they'll believe her. A busboy shouldered the door open. Kate ducked, but not fast enough. Grant's head jerked up. For one paralyzing heartbeat, their eyes locked. The billionaire and the street rat. Did he recognize her? The insignificant vendor he'd ruined days before? Then Marcus coughed pointedly, and Grant's attention snapped back to business. Kate dissolved into the darkness. Back in her apartment, she pinned a grainy photo of Marcus to the peeling wallpaper. Red yarn connected him to her parents' accident case file. Obviously, Grant is with him. That must be the reason for their meeting. Outside, the Neon Eat sign finally guttered out completely. Darkness swallowed the room whole, but nothing could extinguish the fire in her chest. She had found him, finally. The time read 11:03 p.m. when they struck. Grant Temple straightened his tie as he exited the Fiorella, the restaurant's ambient light glinting off his platinum cufflinks. His phone buzzed, another merger update. He never saw the black van glide to a stop 15 feet away. Zalo, the tires screeched. 3 armed figures materialized like ghosts. At 11:04 p.m., the taser prong struck Grant's neck before his bodyguard could react. A suppressed gunshot. The bodyguard collapsed, clutching his shattered knee. A second bullet between his eyebrows. Professional. Kate Owen pressed deeper into the alley shadows, her breath shallow. These weren't ordinary criminals. The way they moved, like a SWAT team. One covered the street, while 2 others hauled Grant's convulsing body toward the van. At 11:06 p.m., the puppet master revealed himself. She saw him. Marcus Vey emerged from the van's passenger side, adjusting his cashmere coat. He crouched beside Grant's paralyzed form. "Don't struggle, Grant," Marcus murmured, patting his cheek. "The board will receive your resignation letter tomorrow. By the time they realize it's a forgery." He slipped Grant's phone from his pocket. "I'll own 51% of Temple Holdings." Kate's nails bit into her palms. This wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a hostile takeover. Time read 11:07 p.m., and it was Kate's moment of decision. Kate could melt away. Let the man who stomped on her like she was a pest suffer. But then, that was Marcus Vey, the man she had a score to settle with. The man who made her become what she'd become. The van's interior light illuminated Grant's face. Blood trickled from his nose where he'd hit the pavement. His eyes, wide with terror, locked onto hers across the distance. Recognition, desperation. Her fingers found the switchblade in her pocket. 11:08 p.m. Kate made a calculated intervention. She moved silently along the alley wall. The kidnappers were loading Grant into the van. Marcus was already inside. She needed a distraction, now. A trash can toppled as she kicked it. The metallic crash echoed off the buildings. "Contact right," one kidnapper barked. They spun toward the noise, weapons raised. Kate ducked behind a dumpster as a silenced bullet whizzed past. Too close. "Leave the witness." Marcus's voice snapped from inside the van. "We have what we came for." The engine roared. Tires screamed against asphalt as the van accelerated. With Grant Temple trapped inside, Kate emerged from cover, heart pounding. The street was empty except for the bodyguard's corpse. Then she saw it. A single black glove dropped near the curb. Inside, a security keycard stamped Vey Shipping, Dock 14. Kate pocketed it just as distant sirens wailed. She looked toward where the van had disappeared. Marcus had Grant, but now she had Marcus's location. 2:17 a.m. Kate reached the Vey Shipping warehouse, which was located in an area known on the street as the Devil's Dockyard. It loomed like a tomb in the harbor's fog. Chain-link fences topped with razor wire. Motion sensors every 30 feet. Amateurs. Kate Owen crouched in the shadows of a rusted cargo container, studying Dock 14's weak points. Guard patrols every 12 minutes. Predictable. Camera blind spots. Northwest corner near the fire exit. Marcus's van, parked carelessly near the loading bay. Arrogant. It never failed to amaze her that men with guns are always so cocky and careless. She palmed the stolen key card, its edges biting into her calloused fingers. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was revenge and leverage. The guard never saw the wire loop around his ankle. One sharp yank. He crashed face first into the dock's wet concrete. Kate's elbow connected with his temple before he could groan. 6 seconds. She swiped his key fob and dragged him behind pallet. The security panel blinked green under her stolen credentials. Too easy. The warehouse interior smelled of salt water and sweat. Kate moved like smoke between shipping containers, following the voices. Should have put a bullet in him up front, a man grumbled. Marcus wants to transfer first, another replied. Stock prices tank after the suicide. A third voice laughed, Marcus himself. Relax. Temple's not going anywhere. Kate's jaw tightened. She peered around the container's edge. Grant Temple slumped in a metal chair, wrists zip-tied to its arms. His Brioni shirt was torn, one eye swollen shut. A laptop sat before him, camera light blinking, recording his confession. Marcus leaned in, smiling. Say the words, Grant. I can't live with the embezzlement guilt. Grant spat blood on the keyboard. Marcus sighed, nodding to a henchman. Again, a punch landed on Grant's ribs. He choked on a scream. Kate's fingers twitched toward her knife. Not yet. The fire alarm was child's play to trigger. As klaxons wailed, Kate sliced the warehouse's main power line, plunging them into darkness. Darted to the emergency exit, wedging it open with a bolt cutter. Waited. Like rats, the kidnappers scrambled toward the noise. Marcus barked orders. Check the east dock. You, guard Temple. Only one man remained. Mistake. The guard's neck met Kate's blade before he could turn. She caught his body, lowering it silently. Grant's head jerked up. His good eye widened. The street vendor. Kate pressed a finger to her lips. She didn't free him. Instead, she crouched eye level with her tormentor and whispered, You owe me a debt. Grant's voice was raw. Name your price. Kate smiled. She traced the knife down his cheek, drawing a thin red line. Dropped a burner phone in his lap. Pressed the dead guard's gun into his bound hands. Survive until sunrise, she murmured, and I'll consider us even. Then she melted back into the dark, just as Marcus's shout echoed through the warehouse. Where is he? The warehouse lights flickered back on, revealing Grant Temple slumped in his chair, alone, the gun and phone hidden under his thighs. His split lip dripped blood onto the burner phone screen. A shadow moved in the rafters above. Kate Owen watched through the steel grating as Marcus stormed back into the room, his polished Oxfords kicking aside the dead guard's body without a glance. Who is helping you? Marcus grabbed Grant's hair, wrenching his head back. Did you have someone tail us? Lansing? Who? Grant's swollen eye focused past Marcus, directly at Kate's hiding spot. She held up 3 fingers. Then 2. Then, the explosion rocked Dock 14's far side, exactly where Kate had rigged the fuel line to the generator. Marcus's men scrambled toward the blast. Fire alarms shrieked. In the chaos, Grant smashed the burner phone against his chair's leg, activating the GPS tracker. Twisted the zip ties until his wrist bled, but the gun was free. Aimed at Marcus's knee and fired. The shot went wide. Grant, billionaire, yes, but he was no marksman. But at least he succeeded in sending Marcus diving for cover. Kate dropped from the rafters behind Grant, her knife slicing his restraints. Run or die, she hissed. They burst through the emergency exit into the dockyard's maze of containers. Behind them, Marcus's scream of rage cut through the night. Find them. Grant wheezed, clutching his ribs. Why help me now? Kate shoved him behind a container stack and whipped out her phone, showing a live feed of police cars converging on the warehouse. Because this, she said coldly, costs half your fortune. Grant laughed, spitting blood. You must be joking, or blackmailing me. Kate tapped her screen. A document appeared. Temple Holdings shares, 49% transfer. She'd hacked his servers during the kidnapping. Prepared the paperwork while he was unconscious. Left a digital trail implicating Marcus in her parents' murders. You have 2 choices, Kate said, pressing the knife to his throat where she'd nicked him earlier. Sign, or I'll walk away and just let your pal Marcus explain why your suicide left 2 bullets in your skull. Grant's eyes flicked to the warehouse, where Marcus's men were fanning out with flashlights. Marcus's voice echoed through the yard. Check the south containers. Kate's phone buzzed. The cops were 90 seconds out. Grant stared at the document, at the knife, at the girl he'd once thought beneath notice. "Tick-tock, Mr. Temple," Kate whispered. Somewhere close, a flashlight beam swept over rusted metal. The container alley erupted in muzzle flashes as Marcus's men opened fire. Grant Temple hit the deck, his designer shirt soaking up dock filth. Kate Owen moved. She pivoted off a cargo crate, switchblade flashing, across the first gunman's wrist. Tendons severed, into the second's thigh. Femoral artery nicked. Blood sprayed black in the moonlight as both men collapsed. Grant stared. "What the hell are?" "Down!" Kate yanked him behind cover as a bullet sparked where his head had been. Kate's mind calculated faster than the gunman could aim. 3 hostiles remaining, including Marcus. 7 rounds left in the pistol she'd stolen from the first guard. 42 seconds until police breached the gate. She ejected the magazine. 1 fired, 6 bullets now. Grant gaped. "Who are you?" Kate chambered around. "You should have paid attention when you mocked me." The next attacker rounded the corner. Kate fired through the container wall. The man screamed as the bullet shattered his kneecap. Grant flinched at the point-blank execution. Jesus Christ. Kate didn't blink. They were going to burn you alive in that warehouse. She tossed him a knife. "Make yourself useful." A shotgun blast shredded the container above them. "Marcus, enough games, Grant," he roared, advancing through the smoke. "You think some girl changes anything?" Kate rolled into the open. Too slow. The shotgun's second blast caught her in the shoulder. She spun into the dirt, blood soaking her jacket. Grant froze. This was it. The moment to choose. Run or fight. Marcus laughed, racking the shotgun. "Should have run when you had the chance, girlie." Kate moved like lightning, threw dirt in his eyes, kicked the shotgun barrel skyward, drove her blade through his foot. Marcus howled as she wrenched the knife sideways, pinning him to the dock. "You don't know what I've survived," Kate hissed, her blood dripping onto his $5,000 shoes. Sirens wailed. Red and blue lights flooded the yard. Grant stared at the carnage. 4 men down, 2 dead, 2 bleeding out. Marcus screaming with a knife through his foot. Kate, just a homeless girl, standing over them all. Police radios crackled. Shots fired. Hostages. Kate yanked her blade free and grabbed Grant's collar. "Now do we have a deal?" 3:22 a.m. Her grip was iron despite the blood loss. "Sign the transfer," she hissed. "Or I walk away right now and let him keep the immunity deal that you know he'll be asking for. It will be his word against yours. You and I know that men like Marcus have some corrupt cops on their payroll." Grant's eyes dropped to the phone she'd pressed into his palm, the document still open. 49% of Temple Holdings. He took the stylus. Signed away 49% of his company to a... He didn't know what to call her or even how to describe her. He didn't even know her name. The police floodlights painted the dockyard in stark white. Grant Temple sat in a gurney, watching paramedics tend to Kate's gunshot wound. She hadn't flinched when they'd extracted the buckshot. Who is this girl? This street urchin? Across the chaos, Marcus Vey screamed at arresting officers. "You don't know who I am. I own half this city's." 5 years earlier, the night the world ended for Kate, the oven timer dinged just as the front door burst open. 14-year-old Kate Owen froze, her mother's chocolate cake steaming between them. Then, pop, 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 her mother collapsed. Blood bloomed across the happy birthday tablecloth. Kate, her father, an NYPD forensic accountant, threw her into the hall closet. Through the slats, she saw 3 intruders in tactical gear. Her father's gun clicking empty after 2 shots. The leader removing his mask to wipe sweat from his brow. Marcus Vey, younger, no silver in his hair, but unmistakable. "Where's the drive?" Marcus pressed his pistol to her father's temple. Her father spat in his face. The gunshot made Kate's ears ring. As Marcus's men ransacked the apartment, one item fell from him, a silver cufflink engraved with the Temple Holdings logo. Kate didn't breathe until dawn. The police took them to the station. In the interrogation room, the detective informed Grant that Mr. Vey claimed this was purely business, and that he'd never met Miss. Kate remained nameless, staring at the one-way mirror. She slid a flash drive across the table. "Play it." The screen flickered to life. Security footage from the Owen apartment hallway. Marcus's face clear as day. Grant recoiled. "Jesus." Kate stood, her bandages weeping red. "Immunity's off the table now, right?" As she left, she dropped Marcus's blood-stained cufflink in front of Grant. The same one she kept for 1,826 days. It's 4:15 a.m. at the police headquarters. The interrogation room stank of sweat and stale coffee. Grant Temple paced like a caged animal, his reflection warping in the one-way glass. "They were my father's cufflinks," he said for the third time. "Marcus must have stolen them from our estate sale after my dad's funeral, because that was the last time I saw them." Detective Ruiz didn't blink. "Convenient," he commented. Kate watched from the corner, her shoulder now properly bandaged but still burning with every breath. She said nothing. Grant's gold Rolex, the same one he'd flaunted while crushing her scars, clicked loudly in the silence. At 4:27 a.m., the DA entered, tossing a file on the table. Vey's singing like a canary. "Says you knew about the shipping containers. Temple. The girls from Eastern Europe." Grant's face went gray. "That's a lie." Kate finally spoke. "Is it? Because if he has your company's cufflinks, you must be running some shit together." She swiped open his signed contract on her phone, the one granting her 49% voting rights, and tapped a hidden clause. Section 12.3. All offshore holdings subject to audit upon transfer. Grant's breath hitched. He hadn't read the fine print. "You won't find anything, girl." "I'm innocent," he said. "I'm not girl. I'm Kate. Kate Owens." The hospital elevator doors closed, leaving them alone. Grant's polished facade cracked. "I gotta thank you, Kate. I owe you my life. Thank you very much, and I apologize for the way I treated you the other day." Kate studied her reflection in the elevator buttons. The girl who'd slept in subway cars. The orphan who'd eaten from dumpsters outside restaurants like the Fiorella. "I don't want your money, Grant," she said finally. The doors opened to the rooftop helipad. Dawn painted the skyline in hues of blood and gold. Wind whipped Grant's ruined shirt as he faced her. "Then what? Why did you save me?" Kate stepped closer, her stitches pulling. She took his Rolex, the one worth more than her apartment, dropped it over the edge. They both counted the 42 stories to impact. Pressed Marcus's cufflink into his palm. "Now you understand," she said softly, "what powerless feels like." Below them, the city woke, unaware that its wealthiest man had just been broken. And Inspector Ruiz's men came and led him to a cell because the cufflinks put him right in the middle of a murder investigation. At 6:45 a.m., the forensic report landed on Detective Ruiz's desk with a damning thud. Temple was telling the truth about the cufflinks, Ruiz admitted, sliding the document to Kate. Security footage from the estate sale shows Marcus pocketing them while pretending to inspect a watch. Kate studied the grainy image. Marcus's sleight of hand unmistakable. Across the precinct, Grant sat slumped in a holding cell, his Armani suit wrinkled beyond salvation. Kate's fingers tightened around the transfer documents in her pocket. Time for the final play. 8:17 a.m. Grant didn't look up when his cell door clanged open. "Charges dropped," the guard said. "Your lawyer's here." But it wasn't his attorney waiting in the visitation room. It was Kate. She slid 2 folders across the table. Share rescission agreement, nullifying her 49% claim. Temple Foundation charter, mandating $20 million per year for homeless shelters. "No loopholes this time," she said. "Every dollar tracked. Every shelter camera linked to my servers." Grant's hand shook as he flipped through the terms. "Why give back?" Kate stood, her shadow falling across him like a judge's gavel. "Why do you think?" Minutes later, Grant burst onto the precinct steps, the signed documents clutched in his hand. "Wait, where do I?" But the street was empty. She was gone. Only a single scarf, deep blue, like the one he'd ruined, fluttered on a railing. Pinned to it a note. "I'll find you." 1 year later, Temple Foundation HQ. The ribbon-cutting cameras flashed as Grant unveiled the 50th shelter. His tie was slightly askew. No personal valet anymore. Reporters clamored. What inspired this change, Mr. Temple? He opened his mouth to recite the practiced answer, then froze. On his office window, reflected in the glass behind the crowd, a familiar silhouette watched from across the street, gone before he could turn. That night, in an empty office, Grant sat alone, reviewing shelter blueprints. The envelope on his desk hadn't been there when he left. Inside, a photo of Marcus Vey in Prison Orange, a news clipping about the Owens case being reopened, a single line in precise handwriting, "I'm watching," and a smiley face. The motion-activated camera above his desk blinked once. Red light. Recording. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Here are 3 questions for you. 1. Would you have saved Grant after what he did? Vote. No way, let him rot. Only if he paid me first. Yes, but I'd make him suffer longer. 2. What's the real reason Kate left the note? Eyes. Comment your theories. A. She's testing his redemption. B. She still needs him for revenge. 3. Which scene hit hardest? When Kate sliced Marcus's foot, vengeance served cold. Grant signing over his empire. The final "I'm watching" note. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming stories.